Good afternoon, morning, whenever you're watching me. Thank you for being here. Like and subscribe. This is a heavy duty topic we're going to deal with today, and I hope that you're ready for it. My friends in Ireland called me in the middle of the night and very upset, very concerned. And uh, when somebody calls you in the middle of the night and wakes you up, of course, um, you think it's the worst thing. Well, what happened was that there was, I guess, some kind of demonstration and protests and things by migrants in Ireland, and they got real close to the house, and I guess they evacuated to the police station. This is Ireland. This is Ireland. You know where Ireland is next to England. This is part of the real world. An old country. It's scary to think that people are being driven from their homes. It is scary to think that there are people coming into Ireland that are not being absorbed and not even trying to appreciate the culture and the living. Isn't that terrible? These people were welcomed with open arms over the last 20 years into their country, and now they want a Muslim state. So, me, I deep dive everything, and I came up with all these uh, articles and videos and uh, EU presentations, and I've never been a fan of the EU, so let's get that out of the way. Let me also say that I don't hate Muslims. I don't hate anybody. My days of hating are well over it. Uh, Not productive, and it also just makes you miserable. So don't hate. Just figure it out. Talk to people. Read stuff. Get your opinion on it, and then hold with your opinion. So here we go. Migrants. I don't care whether it's in America or Canada or anywhere in the EU, Ireland, and England, Poland, Germany, Sweden, go up there, and Netherlands. For 20 years, they've been left pretty much free roam. All the borders for the EU were taken down, and there was free travel between the countries. So the migrants flooded in from the south and from the east, the Baltic countries and the African countries, and they made their way north into the EU. France, that's a classic example of a country that let them in with no restrictions whatsoever. Well, in the EU, they say you have to, right? That's part of the EU. If you belong to the EU, you have to let migrants in. So 20 years down the road, here we are with all these migrants, Now they have kids, and some of their kids have kids. And in Ireland, this is going to be a little bit shocking, but 20% of the people in Ireland are not Irish. 20%. You understand what, in a small country like Ireland, how big a voting block that is? When they go out to demonstrate, they're huge. They fill the streets. Dublin, the, Dublin has become a war zone between left and right and Christian and Islam and whatever else. It's a scary place right now. And I love Ireland because obviously we have family there. But then when I dove into it, I realized, do you know that Poland, about a little more than 3 years ago, closed their borders? They absolutely run a fence around Poland with another fence with troops in between because Belarus was cutting the original fence and letting migrants in from Belarus so that they could get to Germany and Poland and establish themselves for 20 years. 'Cause for 20 years, Poland has tried, and Poland did try. You go back and look over their what they did, giving money and housing and uh, you know classes to become a Polish person or a German person. They did bend over backwards for it. However, now, and I hate to centralize it down to one absolute, but it is true, the Islamic people are not integrating into Polish society or even the German society. They're not, we know they're not integrating into French society because they live in these little ghettos rather than live within the mainstream. England, England right now is at a daily battle with this different factions. They sent me a video. I wish I hadn't watched it, but there's an imam, that's equivalent to a priest. He dumped a rug off the side of the bridge there, and I don't know the name of the bridge. And this prayer rug, it was like, I don't know, maybe 20 feet long, and started singing prayers 5 o'clock at night. I guess that's tradition in the Islamic faith that they have their evening prayers and their morning prayers, which I always thought were pretty. Oh yeah, pretty. You like those? I always thought that the sound of those prayers was very peaceful. I don't know what they said, but I don't know what a lot of things say that I find peaceful. Now he's got microphones and he's singing this prayer out over the river and it's echoing into the city. Cut ahead a little bit and you see probably 30 armed police officers surrounding this imam. You would think they were there because they didn't have a license to do this or, you know, there wasn't any prearranged. No. Why they're there is because they have to protect the imam from the English, from the Brits, from the people who have lived there for centuries. Amazing. This They literally take over little towns and they post this is an Islamic area now. They don't want you bringing your dogs in this area because Islam thinks that dogs are dirty. So they will kill your dog. Look at the stats in Germany and Poland and England, France. The number of stabbings have increased every year. Stabbings. I'm not saying shootings. There's been plenty of shootings and bombings. You can look that up, but that's too depressing for me. What I'm telling you is just look up stabbings. Why? Because in Islam, the blade is always carried and always used. Not only is it quieter than a gun, but in the right hands, 2 slashes and you're done. English women have reported that they've been followed. Irish women, the number of rapes and molestations and frightening situations involving these migrants is steadily increasing over the 20 years. But in the last 3 years, it's astronomical. So Poland and Germany, they close their borders. Everybody that gets in trouble who's a migrant gets kicked out back to their home country. Everybody who commits a crime or major, say, a rape or murder goes to jail, and then he gets shipped back to his country. They're just cleaning house. There's a video right now of the Polish president saying, "Look, we're number one in all the EU. We're the safest country. We have no terrorism. We have no murders." No, he didn't say no murders. He said we had 4 murders last year, and they were all domestic. Uh, Even their traffic citations are down. How do you like that? They crack down on the migrants, and the traffic tickets go down and accidents. You have to understand what Polish people were putting up with. These people would move into these luxury apartments right next to the people that have been living there forever, and they would be butchering lambs and pigs and chickens right in the parking lot between two cars because that's part of their heritage. When they have a celebration, it has to be freshly killed, and for whatever reason, a certain person has to cut it up and cook it. That's there. But if you see somebody butchering a lamb or not a pig, though, I made a mistake. Thank you. Got people checking me on this stuff. Not a pig, but a chicken or a lamb or I don't care, your left foot. You see this guy with an axe and a machete killing an animal so they can have their celebration in the parking lot of an apartment building. And you look around at all the cars there, very expensive cars, beautiful place. And he's butchering this thing between two cars on the asphalt or the ground, whatever they use over there. There are areas in all three countries you can't go unless you speak one of the Islamic tongues. England, finally, I don't know what happened. It's just been the last 17 months, woke up. I mean, the people have been screaming for 3 years, we can't have this in our country. Finally, Parliament woke up, and you can see the videos where uh, the Conservative Party and the right wingers and all those people who supposedly taking care of the people who were born and raised in your country are going to finally stand up because they've been sitting in the back of the bus waiting for something to happen. It is a terrible, terrible thing when you think about it. That it's like, think about your home. You let somebody into your home because of whatever the circumstance, dire circumstance, house burns out, whatever, and you let him in your home. And within 3 months, he's telling you how to run your home. And now, not only is he telling you how to run your home, but you need to move in the basement so he can have the big bedroom. And then he comes home one day and he says he's going to marry this girl. She's 13. Well, in Muslim countries, you can marry a girl at 13. I mean, you can't marry a girl at 13 in any EUs or anywhere else, but in Islamic countries. So I'm going to pull this all together for you so you get it, and then I'll go on to more in depth, bring it home. The whole Middle East, whatever country you want to call out, Iraq, Iran, Palestine, Arab, you just have to understand that this is an area that for 5,000 years, actually it's almost 68,000 years, is very tribal. Now, when somebody attacks that area, all the tribes come together and they fight the invaders, Mongols, the Romans, all through history, World War I, World War II. If you go into their area, they get back, they gang together and they fight as one. We know that the CIA trained bin Laden with the sole purpose of bringing the Russians into a war to bankrupt them. And it did. It did exactly what the CIA planned. It bankrupted. Where did we make our mistake? After the French and the Russians, we went in and thought we could control them. You can't control people who are tribal because their loyalty is to their tribe, first and foremost. The country comes second, you understand? And the tie and grace is Islam. There's Christians in that part of the country, world, but they're minor annoyances. This is about the Islamic state of mind and culture. You can't get that. You need to research it and understand what I'm talking to. Like and subscribe. Please send your comments in. I'm running about 70% of people telling me I'm too old to be here, which I really like because that motivates me. Now I want to bring it, I want to scare you a little bit. I want to bring it home. I want to talk about Canada and America and Mexico and all the South American countries, you know. I want to talk to you about migration here. So since the country opened up, we've been letting people in, right? EU did away with their visa program for 20 years, and last 3 years they put the visa program back in. You can't get in these countries unless you're going into France or England. They still have open borders, unfortunately, but they're closing too. They'll close pretty soon. America has always welcomed people from other countries. You came to this country because you knew America would accept you for whatever you were. You might have been a one-armed midget with bifocals on. You come into the country and you add to society. You adjust to our culture. You bring your religion, you bring your culture, you bring all the aspects of your life prior to coming to America. But once you got to America, as my great grandfather said, I'm Italian American. No, he said, I'm an Italian. He said, I come on under the boat. I am an Italian who comes to America. My son, he's an Italian American. He will never be a full Italian because he was born here in America. Then, of course, all the kids, we weren't Italian Americans, we were Americans, and he made sure we knew that. And at the dinner table, he spoke Italian. In the living room or any other part of the house, you spoke English. And if you didn't, I don't know how a guy that small, about 100 pounds, could get across a room and smack you so hard that you wound up in the dining room. But he did it. Now, my German grandfather had the same premise, but he was a little more, how should we say, aggressive. When he came to this country, he had $1.63 and a wife and 2 kids. Can you imagine that today? Step off the boat, you got $1.63, a wife and 2 kids, got no place to live, you don't know anybody, and the kids are screaming because they're hungry. Whoa. The balls on this guy must have been basketballs. These people made it. My grandfather, my German grandfather made it because he was a monster. This guy had hands on him, and he was 6 foot, almost 4 or 5. He was a huge man. He had spent his whole life in Germany being a farmer. He came to America, and that's all he knew. He worked in the factories. He swept streets at night and emptied trash cans for the city. The guy, I think, worked 24 hours a day until he passed out because the only other thing I saw him do was drink. Then they bought the big property, and of course, the farm started, and that's another story. But they assimilated. They took what they had, their culture, their religion, their way of doing things, the way of cooking, the way of greeting each other. And then they took the American culture and the ways of doing things, and they integrated them. No. Did the first migrants, the immigrants that got off the boat, well, they were very successful cursorily. It looked good. But then their children, they grew up. They went to war. They were the greatest generation. They knew what it was to be an American. And here's the part that kills me. In World War II, There was segregation. But if you ask any of those World War II vets, there might have been segregation at the general level and at the politician level. But when you're on the ground, a foot deep in mud with a gun, and there's 100 people on the other side, you don't care who's in that hole with you, whether he's black or Asian or Filipino or Mexican. If he's Native American, thank you God for Native Americans. They won World War II. That's another story. Because they were all scared. These were 18 and 19 and 20-year-old kids. Most of them didn't finish high school because they wanted to get in the war. Here they are on a Pacific island or in a hedgerow somewhere in France, scared to death. But they went out and did it anyway. They saddled up, they loaded their gun, and they went out, even though they were scared to death to do it. That's the greatest generation. How they did it, to this day, I don't know. My dad never talked about it. My uncle Art was the one that talked the most. He was an Army Ranger, and because he could speak Italian and German, they parachuted him in before the invasion of Italy to get the partisans together and start blowing things up so that when the guys hit the beach, they wouldn't get massacred, which they did anyway. Poor planning, once again. Generals fighting over who's going to control it, and then men dying. But that's another story. A story about Anzio. In Germany, it was just a cluster. You had one man who hypnotized the whole country. You had people blindly following this man and his group of minions. They did horrendous things. They participated. Any German that tells you that if they lived in Germany during World War II and they didn't participate, they're full of shit. The Germans I know, and I know quite a lot of them because they're in my family, said the same thing. It was go along or get killed. It was that simple. If you didn't go along, you got killed. And remember, the borders were closed, so they couldn't get out. That's not an excuse for Germany or the German people, but that's the fact. So let's get back to America. So once again, I'm just going to go back 20 years because it'll frustrate me if I have to go back any further. Look at the migration patterns. Okay. 20 years ago, it was all families, a dad, a mom, bunch of kids. They had relatives here or contacts so that, when they got here, they had some place to go and people to help them. It was admirable. It was the Mexican people that I remember coming in, and they worked for me in the kitchens, were wonderful people. They loved their family. They integrated their culture with their food and their fiestas and everything, but they didn't lose track that they were no longer in Mexico. They knew they were in America, and this was their opportunity. You're up to bat, you fly out or you hit a home run, but you make every effort you can to incorporate yourself into society. Let's fast forward for the next 5 years. What happened? What was the change? Why are people now going, oh, I guess it's time for us to exert our dominance and our participation? So they make enclaves, and I don't care whether you're Mexican, Guatemalan, uh, any kind of Islamic or whatever. You find a city, and you can look it up. There's cities all over the country that are predominantly Spanish and predominantly Muslim. I'm not going to go into that. There's parts of LA, if you don't go in and know in Spanish, you don't get any cooperation. There are parts of Illinois where the Muslim community has driven out everybody, and they've made these enclaves 5 years ago. They started this, not assimilating, but just having side by side cultures and, keeping apart. It's 5 years ago, not a long time ago. What happened in the last 3 years? Well, as we can see, migration is like out of control. The numbers, just the sheer numbers. I don't even know where I could find a good number, because the government says one thing, Texas says another, Mexicans say another, Guatemalans say another. Oh my God. I am like at my wit's end with my government can't manage our borders. I mean, I manage my borders. I mean, I moved out of the big house and down to the little house, but I sure do have good fences around my property still. I still take my four-wheeler up there every day and make sure the fences are intact. Why? I don't want you wandering on my property, and I don't want my animals wandering on your property. Good fences make good neighbors. It's true. It's not just something we say. So what I did was I wanted to check out who's coming into the country. So I got on the website there for government, and as you can see, in the last 2 years, it's no longer families coming in. No, let me say it again so everybody hears it. It is not families coming in. Okay? It is military age, anywhere from 18 up to 24, young men. No families, no ties. They don't know anybody. They're just coming to America. Now we find out that these young men are gang members, because what they do is go in and set up and prey upon the weaker, like every gang. What else is going on, though? That's the easy one to track. What about all these young women? Who is being trafficked? Who is just coming to America? Who is being forced? Nobody's checking on that. I mean, you take them in, you take a photograph of them, you ask them where they're going, you give them a court date to show up for their asylum hearing. less than 17% show up. That's an incredible number. So everybody else is just running willy-nilly through our country. So once again, the EU is so far ahead of us. They gave out these debit cards, right? Couldn't send money out of the country. You couldn't get more than whatever it was equal to $25 in cash at any time. You could buy groceries, you could use it for your laundry and for your housing. That's what you could use your debit card for. Very restrictive. They would track every dollar you spent. So let's turn that around, come back to America. We give them debit cards. Right now, New York's over and above what the feds give them. New York gives you $15,000 a year in a debit card. I think they give it like twice a month or maybe once a month. I forget. I was talking to somebody who works for the state, and they said they weren't real clear on it. But the thing is, because of all the rules and regulations, we cannot track where these people are sending this money or what they're doing with this money. So if you're getting, say, somewhere in the neighborhood $12,000 from the federal government, and you're in New York City, you're getting 15 grand from the city, Now, Governor Hochul, our famous New York governor, she starts throwing money into the pot. So there's even more money for housing and uh, language skill classes. Always like that one. The language skill class happened around the dining room table with 5 and 6 year olds and 8 year olds teaching the adults how to speak English. But we can't track a dime. We don't know what they're doing. Are they sending it back to their family to get them up here? Maybe. Are they using it for housing and food? Well, maybe. Or are they paying it in fees? What am I talking about paying in fees? What the hell are you talking about paying in fees? Well, these gangs are requiring them. They know when the checks come in or the EBT card is loaded, and they charge them a fee. It's never a lot of money. It's $25, but you're getting it from 1,000 people. You see how that works? They're skimming the migrants our tax money. It starts out as our tax money. It's given away by the federal government and the state government and the city government, but we can't track it. So as soon as the gangs found this out, hey, this is free money. We just walk in there and with one of those card machines and we zip the card and we take, $25 from each person. And then maybe when you go to work, you gotta pay the whoever hired you, a fee. Understand where I'm going with this because I'm going to wrap it up real tight, like a nice big bundle with a nice big bow on them. The gangs are just the beginning. You have former soldiers coming here who have been trained and know how to operate in an urban environment. Think about it. What are you going to do? How are you going to get this under control again? I'm 73. Guess what? I'll take some of the weight. I'm a boomer. Drive that truck at me. I'll take you out one way or the other. Probably get killed for doing it, but I'm a boomer. And Gen X, I figure they got their shit together just because we beat the shit out of them growing up. And because we worked all the time, they're, like they say, they're feral. They drank out of the garden hose. I always liked that one. How about drinking out of the horse straw? How's that? Would you do that? You don't have any shoes and you see with somebody without feet. Get a grip on reality. It's up to you guys, not up to us old guys. We can ring the bell, scream at the top of our lungs, but unless you handle it, you're going to lose your country. You want me to say it again? Do you want me to make it real? There are areas in major cities that even the cops don't go to. Central Park has turned back into a cesspool. Used to be. Hey, remember when Billy Joe sang there and Frank Sinatra? And they had the carnivals in the park and they had rowing days. And I mean, Central Park was back in the 70s. It was a shooting gallery for drugs, but they cleaned it up and they brought it back and they planted it and they decorated and they fixed the facilities. Only to in 2022, 23, and 24 to let it all go back to shit. I wish I had a magic wand and I could fix this for you. Not so much for you, but for my grandchildren. Those are the people I worry about. What is the life like that they're coming into? If you're not thinking about your children, your grandchildren, your neighbor's children, if you're only focusing on yourself, get off the channel. I don't even want to talk to you. You got to be more involved than that. You can't be sitting there on your ass knowing that. Can't say you don't know it now. I told you. Well, boy, as always, like and subscribe. I'm happy that you're here. All God's blessings and be safe.